Hey guys, my name's Keyan Houshmand, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you a really minimalistic setup and how you guys can mix your heavy guitars for absolutely free. Let's have a look. We've all been there, we've all been strapped for cash, and we all see people using the fancy plugins that we really want, but we can't afford them. I know what that's like, I've been through it myself, so I'm going to show you guys some completely free ways to mix your heavy guitar tones. And hopefully along the way you guys can see how I mix my guitars and how you can use those concepts and ideas in your own mixing. As always though, before we start, if you guys like this video at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you saw or heard. And if you found this video helpful at any time, please feel free to send it to a friend. If you guys want to support me directly, you can hit that red subscribe button down below, or you can go to my Patreon and check out my affiliate links. All that stuff is down in the description below. Right, let's crack on. So before we get started, all of these free plugins that I'm about to show you are going to have download links in the description where you guys can click on it, download them, install them, and then use them yourself. So here is the demo track that we're going to be using for today's video. This is taken straight from the Apex preamp demo video that I did a couple weeks back. As you can see, we have a drum track here, bass track, a rhythm guitar track left, rhythm guitar track right, so they're double tracked, one hard pan left, one hard pan right. Those are the tracks that we're going to be manipulating today with the free plugins. We also have just a general kind of lead layer guitar and then some sound effects here when it kicks into the breakdown. So if you haven't heard it already, I'll give a quick run through of it now, and then after I'm going to show you guys how you can use completely free plugins to mix your heavy guitars, these two tracks right here. So let's just give it a quick little listen to see what we're working with. And then it just kind of fades out after that. So as you can see on the top right of the screen here, we're using two plugins in total. One of them is being used twice. We're using Span Plus, which is a frequency analyzer, so you guys can see all the different peaks and stuff of your guitar tracks. I'll show you why I use that in a little bit. And then we got two instances of TDR Nova, one of them being a multi-band compressor for the palm mutes, which I'll explain what that is in a moment, as well as like kind of fixing some of that fizzy high end. And then the other one is just general EQ shaping with a high pass and a low pass. So as you can see, this mixer track right here is the one that our rhythm guitars are going into. If I go to 31, which is hard pan left, it's feeding into 33. Same thing with 32, it's feeding into 33. So both our rhythm guitars are going into 33. I know I haven't labeled them. It's very lazy of me and it's not good etiquette, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play through the track one more time, but as I'm doing it this time, I'm going to be turning all the plugins on and off periodically between the track. So I'm kind of A being between the two, A being between all the plugins being on and all the plugins being off, just so you guys can hear the differences and kind of hear what I was going for with the mix. So I'm going to start the track with all the plugins enabled, and then I'll disable it and so on and so forth. So as you guys can tell, it sounds a lot more clear, a lot more distinct in the mix with the plugins on, and I'll show you guys the moves that I made to make it sound that way. So let's dive into the first plugin here. Again, this is Span or Span Plus. This is a frequency analyzer. Now, what this does, it kind of shows me the guitar tracks and the EQ curve as it's playing, so I can see different peaks at different moments during the guitar track. And you might be asking yourself, why would I want to see this? This plugin is doing absolutely nothing. It's just visualizing it for me on the screen. The reason being is because a lot of paid EQ plugins, such as the FabFilter stuff that I know a lot of people use, myself included, has this inbuilt in the EQ plugin. But the free ones like TDR Nova does not have it, so it will not kind of have that kind of frequency analyzer as it's playing. You will need to download something like Span Plus to kind of see. The reason why I want to see what's happening is because I can see the general EQ curve of the guitar track. I can see if there's any problem frequencies. I can also see where the palm mutes are living. So if you guys don't already know, when you palm mute your guitar, you're sending in a lot more low-end information into your interface or into your computer, whatever you're recording on. In doing so, there's certain bass peaks that happen as you're playing. So when you're in a mixing mindset, that's not what you want, because you want everything to be as consistent as possible. So there's no peaks in low end in your mix. That just kind of makes everything fart out and sound not that great. So a way that we can mediate that is kind of figure out where those palm mutes are living through a frequency analyzer like Span Plus, and then use a plugin such as TDR Nova, which has an inbuilt multi-band compressor that will only clamp down on certain frequencies when they exceed a certain level, if that makes sense. So I'll play through the track again, and as you can see on this frequency analyzer, anywhere between around like 100 to 230-ish, whenever I palm mute, it kind of just builds up and up in level, and it gets louder and louder in the mix, and you'll see it in graphical representation on here. So if you guys couldn't tell, whenever there was those quick little triplet palm mutes or those chords, those heavy chords on the open strings, around 100 to 200 it will kind of peak up and up and up, and then drop back down whenever higher notes were played. So that's the first plugin, and then we get into the second plugin, TDR Nova, which is a dynamic equalizer. So you can use it as an EQ, but you can also use it as a multi-band compressor to kind of clamp down on palm mutes, which is what I've done here. So as I identified here, the problem frequency was somewhere between 100 and 200, so I set my EQ point kind of in the middle of that and made sure that my Q curve was kind of covering all those bases. So as you can see, I've got a fairly narrow Q, and the frequency is kind of around 150. I've got it at 142 at the moment. Gain I haven't touched. I want it to be dead flat. I don't want to take any out, and I don't want to add any more. The only thing that I want to do is clamp down on the palm mute. So as you can see here, I'll go into a heavier section of the song where it starts palm muting. And as you can see, when we go into TDR Nova, on this little dial here, whenever it palm mutes, it kind of exceeds this little dial right here. So as you probably saw here, whenever there was palm mutes playing on this little region here, it would just kind of dip down in volume. Especially right there. So I've got a really fast attack and really fast release set, just because I don't want it to be kind of gluey. I want it to be really fast and really transparent. And that's pretty much all that's going on for the multi-band compression. So in a nutshell, just clamping down on the palm mutes to make sure they don't get too boomy in the mix. Then as you can see on the right hand side here, we just got some problem frequencies being taken out. I identified them as 2.3K, and then another at that typical kind of level of anywhere between 3 and 3.5K. So here was 3.3K. You find that this area, that 3.3, anywhere between 3 and 3.5 is a big problem for most heavy guitar tracks. So just kind of dipping down on that a little bit just to kind of make it less fatiguing on the ears goes a long way. It's definitely a subtle difference for sure, but that's what mixing is. It's a lot of little decisions made along the way to kind of get the final sound that you want. So in our first instance of TDR Nova here, we can think of it as kind of like our fixer. So we're kind of fixing things that we don't like. We're fixing the palm mutes, we're fixing the high-end harshness. As we go into our next instance of TDR Nova, this is just general EQ shaping. So first we have a high pass at around 100, just kind of cutting out all that low end gunk that we don't really need, that you're not going to hear anyway, especially in a full mix where you're kind of combating with both a bass guitar and a kick drum that are all competing for those really low end frequencies. You don't really need any of that when you're doing heavy guitars, at least I don't anyway. I should probably mention that all these values that you're seeing here and all these levels and all these dips and stuff like that, you can use it as a guideline, but do not use them as gospel. Listen to your own guitar tracks, listen to the way you're playing. All guitars sound different, all amps sound different, all cabs sound different. This is not going to be the one be-all end-all solution to having a decent heavy guitar mix. Little tricks such as the multi-band compression thing and kind of where to cut and stuff are little tricks that I picked up along the way from people that I really admire. And hopefully by me explaining how I use them, you can kind of learn how to use it yourself and apply it to your own mixes. So again, we have a high pass going at around 100 Hertz. I'm just cutting some of that low end gunk. We have a little bit of a dip happening at around 360. So that kind of like low mid woofiness that I don't really care for too much in my tones anyway. So I take that out. That's a little bit more broad. This one, again, a really broad, very minimalistic cut at around 820, so that kind of coney frequency that I don't really care too much for either. Again, another very narrow cut at 3.9K, just getting rid of some of that harshness again. Similar to what we were doing over here with these two cuts, there was just like another area that I wasn't really liking, so I cut that out as well. It's almost like a whistly kind of frequency. That will live in pretty much every guitar track ever. It's just finding where it is. It might not be at 3.9K in your guitar track, it might be at 3.8, it might be at 4, it might be at 4.1. You just need to use your ears to find it. And then lastly, because we were taking a lot of high end out here and both in the other instance of TDR Nova here, it is sounding a little bit dull. So I just boosted some 6K and it was really broad just to bring out some of the high end in the guitars and to get rid of that like digital amp sim kind of fizziness that you're just not going to hear in a full mix anyway, and it just kind of makes it sound a little bit too much. I've just cut out anything above 11.9K. I should probably mention that I'm using very broad slopes. What I mean by that is if I go that -72, as you can see the cutoff at 100 Hertz, it's very sharp and almost jarring to listen to. So kind of just letting it naturally go out at say like a 12 dB octave is what I'd usually go for a high pass and low pass filter. So what I'll do is I'll play the guitar track again and bypass all the decisions that I've made here, and you can see how it sounds both with and without all these changes here. So as you can probably tell, this plugin is doing most of the heavy lifting out of all these three here. So it's cutting out all that low end, it's cutting out some of that fizzy high end, it's kind of shaping the guitar so it blends in with the bass a little bit more. It's not too coney sounding. Again, all of these tones are going to be different. Your tones are going to be different to mine. Your guitar is going to be different to mine. It's just using your ears to find these problem areas, finding things that you don't like the sound of, cutting them, find things that you want to boost. Like here, I wanted to boost some high end because it sounded a little bit dull, which you could probably tell when I turned it off. It sounded a little bit dull, and as soon as I turned it on, it sounded a little bit more brighter, more present in the mix. So there you guys have it, a completely free way to use completely free plugins to mix heavy, high gain guitars. Again, I'm showing you guys the way that I do it. I never really compress my heavy rhythm guitars because they're already compressed enough as it is. The only things I really do is just general EQ shaping and a little bit of multiband compression on the palm mutes. Again, if you guys want to add something a little bit different, kind of go that extra mile, there is plugins like Ozone Imager, which again is completely free. And what you guys can do is kind of set the stereo width a little bit wider than you hear in your ears. So for example, if I play just the guitar track by itself, I can push the width of the guitar track so they appear wider or sound wider in your ears. Or you can make them sound really narrow. Whether I'm using completely free plugins or paid plugins, I don't really do any of that stereo imaging stuff. If I was to use it, I'll probably use it in something like a chorus where I'd make the guitars just a little bit wider, just so it gives it that wow factor, like, oh, it's a chorus, it sounds a little bit different from the rest of the song. But again, I don't really do that stuff. The only things that I'll really do on heavy guitar tracks are just EQ and multiband compression on the palm mutes, and that's about it. So there you guys have it. If you guys found this video useful at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you saw or heard, and share it to a friend if you think it'd be useful to them as well. Again, if you guys want to support me directly, you can subscribe, or you can check out my Patreon and affiliate links. All that stuff will be down in the description below. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later. I hope you guys found this video useful. I'll see you next time. Ciao.